My name is Harley Quinn. I guess I'm on the run now. Way I figure it, humanity has a last hope in these end days. Looks like it's me.
Well, it pretty much went the way I expected once I learned that there would be a Harley-centric DC vs. Vampires entry. Greetings, comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, reviews comics new and old, to history to anecdotes, truly wherever our whims take us. DC vs. Vampires, the maxi series about vampires taking over the DC universe. We're 6 issues in, time of recording, and then there was a brief hiatus. In that gap, there were some tie-ins, one of which we previously covered, which was DC vs. Vampires Hunters, which focused on Damian Wayne, who had been turned by his brother Nightwing, now the Night King, yes, king of the vampires, trying to take out his elder because he was mad he killed their dad, and Nightwing being surprised that that was Damian's motivation, because he could read everybody like a book except for the times when he couldn't. The main series was co-authored by James Tynion IV and Matthew Rosenberg. These tie-ins have Rosenberg as the sole author. DC vs. Vampires Killers is a Harley-focused outing, already placing it in an interesting space. Harley is in a bit of a transitory period time of recording. Many fans feel a little bit of Harley burnout. This after the character was heavily pushed a few years prior following a surge of popularity in the 2000s, which also coincided with a Deadpool surge. The two were even shipped together for a bit. It was called Harleypool. They eventually wrote a character into one of Harley's later solo series called Red Tool to pay homage to it. In terms of overall popularity, Harley appears to be waning, at least in the comic book space. This has largely to do not only with oversaturation, but with some stark changes in characterization that over time have moved her from character to caricature. She has also lost much of her nuance as time went on, in favor of a more anti-hero kind of position. Although narratively there is rarely proper acknowledgement of the evil she had wrought in her own right. Instead, most of it is placed firmly at the feet of the Joker, placing her in a completely victimized position and robbing her of all agency. It also strips her time with the Joker of some of the nuance that it had at one point. Harley was a multifaceted character. She was likable, but not necessarily a good person. She was personable but manipulative, including towards people that she cared about. She could be both caring and selfish. She could be cunning and strategic, but also lacking in common sense. There was a part of her that genuinely liked the Joker as he was, not just the person that she wished he could be, or the broken person he first presented himself to her as. And yet he also partially manipulated her. But she also aided in some heinous crimes, and went on to become a crime lord in her own right after leaving him, which she did in her first solo series all the way back in the 2000s, just genuinely enjoying her life as Harley Quinn. She had already grown beyond him, but not necessarily in a heroic way. She was a bit of an enigma for some, and as she grew in popularity, there was more and more discussion surrounding her in the pop culture space, particularly online as the digital space grew. Some came to regard her as a domestic abuse survivor, and some of that came to color how she was depicted. For some, she became a figure of female empowerment. As results began to be less and less complex as the positive elements of her personality were pushed to the fore, positive in quotes, and the negative downplayed. For to some, she was no longer a character, but a symbol. Over time, this new depiction had come to hold longer than her classic one. On top of that, some simply didn't know how to characterize her separate from the Joker, or outside of a relationship of any kind, so separate from Deadshot or Poison Ivy. Eventually, a firm shift towards anti-hero or even hero began. It's possible to do redeemed Harley, but you have to put the work in universe, not just have her shift positions and expect everyone to accept it, or well, you don't have to, but you should. So many dead children. The murdered children. In universe, that would be a hard hill to climb out of, and the distress some would never get over it. Such a conflict would also make her more compelling, because you would have some in her corner, others not. And there could be genuine tension there, between characters who believe that she can come back from what happened and what she did, and others who didn't. Rather than her just being blanket accepted most of the time, minus a throwaway line here or there. And those throwaway lines, they get coverage, further forcing her into a symbol role, and not a character allowed the full range of depth inherent to her. For in many ways, some of the things people liked about Harley were gone or changed. The complex, dark, yet funny and charismatic character had in some instances been supplanted by well-worn tropes. Manic pixie dream girl, villain with a heart of gold, chaotic danger princess. There was just less depth there. It was more surface. Of course there would be exceptions, but the general baseline was changing. She was also being amped up in many appearances as well, meaning that if she showed up, she tended to pull focus away from whoever the main character was. Or she would be placed in positions where she always won the day, even against people that she shouldn't. People began to take note of the plot armor, her varying skill set, which all characters have but starts to stand out when abused. Other characters around her began to warp to make her look better, or to facilitate her growth. Of course, mileage varies. Some love this depiction of Harley, wouldn't change a thing. If that is the case, DC vs. Vampires Killers may be up your alley. However, if you have found yourself frustrated by the characterization or direction of Harley of late, then this comic will do little to change that. Let's take a look at DC vs. Vampires Killers, which also raises many a question about Vampire Dick's leadership. Incompetence, thy name is Vampire Dick Grayson. Our pencils in this are by Mike Bowden and Eduardo Mello. Many inkers, LeBeau Underwood, great name, Live Say, Mike Bowden, and Eduardo Mello. Colors by Antonio Fabella, letters by Troy Petery. The cover is fine. It's Harley standing with her back and a crossbow, lightly injured, about to face off against a horde of vampires. The implication, because of how she is glancing back, being that she is surrounded. Something about all of this though, particularly in the face, is giving me Tank Girl vibes. She's had that for a bit though. Future State was heavy Tank Girl Harley. Nice shoes. We open on the Mad Hatter, but also on some flippant narration by Harley.
Okay, so you know the word, right? There was a war, humans lost. My name's Harley Quinn. I guess to run the underworld at Gotham.
Oh, hold on. Why? All of it? Are the leaders in this universe being chosen based on perceived popularity? Perhaps hotness? It's not clear exactly who's dead and who's alive, so who would be a candidate and who wouldn't. She's going over knocking over people who are trying to help humans by smuggling items out for them or to help with the vampires. This is what the Mad Hatter is doing. So already she's not positioned very likably, shaking down people who are trying to help the remaining humans, of whom she is one.
God, that's annoying. If you rhyme again, I'll make Clayface eat you.
Oh, don't do that. It depends which one.
I provide tools to resist the vampires for those in need. You take advantage of them for your own. There's the sentence. Profit.
Also note that she says here that they both have underground networks after she has said she ran the whole thing. This is either an oversight or she's meant to be unreliable, and that's meant to be amusing. So since she's said to be doing this for money, it raises many questions. Is regular currency still valid? Are businesses still operating? It doesn't seem to be the case. How do regular people earn money? Do they just work during the day at the vampire's behest? How many vampires are there to humans? What's the human-vampire ratio? Are the vampires letting them keep their assets? Are the vampires using regular money or some kind of ancient vampire currency, or humans as currency? This one line has opened up a whole host of questions about the DC vs. Vampires universe that are not about to be answered. Not in this issue anyway. So apparently no one can leave Gotham. 'Cause it's the seat of vampire power. Again, 'cause.
And Harley just casually mentions Superman roaming around, eating people.
Harley says that she'll be back in a week for Jervis's cut, and that he needs to stop telling people they can leave Gotham. Then he says the town's not big enough for the two of them and seems to be aiming his crossbow at her, so she turns around and shoots him right in the forehead.
Ooh, a scratching went. Before this, all those boys got their chance to screw up running the city. Now it's my turn.
Is this supposed to be female empowerment or a joke? Because neither is landing. Although humor is subjective, maybe it is. So despite the fact that the skies are darkened, there is still a curfew for humans. Because Catwoman says she's going home, but Harley stays to hang with Clayface and Grundy for a bit. When suddenly Jim Gordon appears, who Harley calls Jeff. Because one of the running gags in this series is that Harley can't remember anybody's name, but there are implications that that's just a joke, like a persona that she's putting on, that she really remembers it so that she can be perceived as less intelligent than she is. Gordon is here because he has Lex Luthor's blood. Yes, the magic cure-all blood, all the way back from issue 1. The blood that Andrew Bennett smuggled to Batman so that he could do something with it. It's here now, somehow. And still nobody's done anything with it. It's still in that little tiny vial.
There is something in his blood that kills vampires. I need you to take it. I was working with Tetch to get out of Gotham. Harley, I know you can get things in and out of Gotham.
Why do people keep saying that?
Yeah, why do people keep saying that? There's been no indication at this point that she can. And if that is to be believed, she killed the Mad Hatter so she could have monopoly on the smuggling of anti-vampire resources. Gordon says that it's up to Harley to save humanity. I guess nobody else was available. Where's Barbara? I don't know. Then vampire enforcers show up, including Arkham Games' Scarecrow. I do like that design. And he says that he lets Harley operate her crime ring. Why would he do that if she's actually smuggling anti-vampire like equipment and paraphernalia out or in? It would make more sense if she wasn't, and that's why they were protecting her, so she could take down other players like the Mad Hatter, who was. Mr. Terrific shows up and he's apparently a vampire sheriff. And Harley says she does try to follow the rules. What are the rules? Seriously, we haven't been told any. What can humans do? What can't they do? What time is the curfew? How are they imparting information to the humans? They keep drawing everything like society's completely collapsed, like it's 10 years into the apocalypse. There is a good joke here when Harley says she doesn't know what day it is because they blot out the sun, and Grundy says Monday, so she agrees. The sun is blotted out. Regular non-modified humans should be having a hard time.
This is our city, our world. You're just food, understood?
How does the society function? When Daybreakers makes more sense, it's gone wrong. Oh, also, apparently Gordon is being left to die there, but they don't bother to draw him on panel. Harley then goes home, which is Arkham Asylum, but if you took that panel of the exterior out, you would just think that her and Selina were living in Wayne Manor. They can't be because they exploded in this universe, but look at how it's drawn. It doesn't look like Arkham. Maybe we're supposed to assume that they stole all this stuff and filled it up, made it bougie. Despite being in a room full of vampires with heightened senses, Gordon was somehow able to slip the vial of Lex blood to Harley. Selina finds it when she slips into Harley's room, claiming that she needs to clean a cut in her face, because she can't wander around with blood in a vampire-filled world, even though she already walked home and was fine. Also, look how she's drawn. She's so suspicious. And you're telling me that cat burglar extraordinaire Catwoman can't sneak past Harley Quinn. It's okay to let characters be better at things that they should be better at than Harley. So Selina finds the blood and notes that Harley is conflicted. She says they shouldn't smuggle it out, they should sell it to the Vampire King to be in his debt. But Harley says she has to think about it and snatches the blood and walks off. Selina tells her not to do anything stupid, so she instantly heads heads to the sewers. There she comes across Grundy, who's been beheaded, and Clayface, who something has happened. It's not super clear. He's really shrunken down, but it's not clear how. It turns out that they did have a boat, and she was smuggling things out. Vampire Dr. Midnight and Mr. Terrific are there, and Harley single-handedly defeats both of them. We spent the first 6 issues of this series watching vampires eviscerate people. Hal constantly killing people with ease who should have given him much more difficulty, or at least some difficulty. And here's Harley, a regular or at least maybe slightly modified human, just taking out head honchos. Green Arrow was too. They should have teamed up in this too, like they did in Injustice. Oh, and so she tries to bring dead Clayface home to honor him, but instead brings home a piece of poop. Hilarious. So Slee is a vampire, and she has been for a while, or at least that's implied, and she was living with Harley and knew about the smuggling, but was letting it happen cause. Is it supposed to be because they're such great friends? Because they aren't. It's like that animated movie that was trying to convince me that Catwoman and Batwoman have chemistry. They don't.
Stop playing the part of the impetuous brat for once. You're better than this.
So Harley hits him with a vase across the face. At least when Nightwing was fighting Jason, there was a way to read it like he was letting him get close because he wanted to turn him. Or when Ollie would kill people, he was doing it long range with arrows.
You call me a traitor. All I've done is look out for you. Make sure you lived well while others died around you.
Yeah, why did you do that?
I'm gonna make you my slave. No, not cool.
But it's fine though, because Harley injected herself with Lex's blood, and this is comic book rules, which means that if it's in your blood, it's infused in you forever. She can turn other people now, like the Hulk, and apparently kills vampires Thanos snap style, because Catwoman just kind of disintegrates. So Bruce couldn't figure it out that that's what it did, or synthesize it? Okay.
And then we end as expected. My name's Harley Quinn. I guess I'm on the run now. You weren't before? Way I figure it, humanity has a last hope in these end days. Looks like it's me. This sucks.
The end? Why did she let Arkham on fire? And so it looks like Harley is the living MacGuffin that can save the DC universe, maybe. This was not the strongest outing in the series, and between the tie-ins of Hunters and Killers, Hunters is the stronger outing. Hunters is tighter, and for all its flaws has more emotional payoff, and utilizes the medium in some interesting ways at points with the paneling. It's a mess, but a more fun mess. This comic is all over the place, and constantly raises in-universe questions, not only of the larger DC vs. Vampires universe as a whole, but within the story itself with concepts it raises there. Harley is not her most caricaturist in this, but she is uneven and her motivations are unclear. Why does she want the money? What good is it doing them? Why is she living with Catwoman?
They have teamed up before on various occasions.
But in this, they don't feel particularly close.
In fact, what closeness there is feels sudden and a bit abrupt.
And it doesn't feel like it's really strictly necessary. What was she smuggling out? Was it the same type of stuff as the Mad Hatter? Her character here is more in line with her villainous interpretation, loving chaos and killing without remorse, lining her up far more with Mr. J than is usual for her modern portrayals. Which is interesting, but nothing is really done with it. There are also these attempted girl power moments that are trying to appeal to her past history without showing it or properly referencing it. Things like, do you think you're the first man that's threatened me? As if she also isn't being threatened by female vampires and just any other type of vampires that are out there. Still in the story, we're meant to empathize with her and feel bad, like when Catwoman betrays her. Catwoman, though, is a non-entity in this, and it could have potentially been stronger if it was someone else who betrayed her. So it could have been an act of real hurt that could have been the catalyst for her turning on the vampires and maybe really wanting to help people, seeing how much turning into a vampire changed a person. A villain would be a good choice for this so that their personality shift post-turning would be less obvious. Take out the Harley smuggling part or her shaking people down. Put her in her chaos role, she's having fun. If there was ever a time for it, it's here. Put more people in Arkham with her so her and her friends are hiding out, stealing what they want, and for them it's like a little oasis and things are fine. That way the mole has reason to keep them content because it keeps them distracted. They're not causing trouble and could perhaps actually be disrupting people who are, like with the Mad Hatter. It would be really solid if it was Ivy who betrayed her. One could play in the space where there are aspects to that relationship that are manipulative, just like her time with the Joker. Because at the start, it was a relationship between two villains.
Just because it was better than Harley and the Joker didn't mean it was perfect or necessarily inherently a source of healing, though some wanted it to be portrayed that way, which it can, but work should be done to show a shift in both characters, or it can come across as rushed, hollow, or pandery, or radically alter one or both characters. Though some feel it should be portrayed only positively because it is a queer relationship, and those are less depicted, or they find comfort in it given the story that can be gleaned. The idea of leaving a toxic relationship and going on to something better, which then again veers more into Harley as a symbol and can place the relationship in a similar space. While others feel there is room for all sorts of portrayals and variety in relationships regardless of orientation, and that true representation facilitates characters being treated as characters in their full right, positively positives and negatives. All storylines on the table.
If one wanted to, they could have it that Harley is the one following along as Ivy suggests these things, only for the reveal to happen and Harley to realize that it was a lie. This could work too, as Ivy is misanthropic. She doesn't care about people in general, Harley is an exception, but plants above all else. So it would be a true shock to see her allied with the vampires after they burnt the forests of the world. This could also play into how much people changed once they were turned, despite Hal saying that they didn't. You'd probably have to push some of the stuff with the green aside to make this work, but this series plays fast and loose with what's canon and what isn't. If Hal can be susceptible to yellow, Ivy can be pre-green. Then with the Lex blood, if it still kills them, that would be devastating. Have it be that her death is the reveal. Like, she goes in for what seems to be a neck kiss, but she's really gonna try and turn Harley because it's clear that Harley is having all these doubts and she doesn't want to lose her. Then she bites in and the blood kicks in, and that's when Harley realizes. That way you can still keep most of the ending the same, where she still injects herself. The blood just killing them bit is a bit anticlimactic, but it's pretty standard for items like that in stories like this. It would be interesting maybe if the blood did something else, like it made them think more humanly. Like maybe it would clear the bloodlust, or they could be reasoned with. Can you tell that I'm still struggling to try and reconcile the way they act after their turn? Some people went full cartoon villain, then others didn't. Why? Harley is still overpowered in this, brute forcing her way through conflicts. She should have to be a bit more clever to win, or having more skills than people of a higher level expertise in that area. It's been happening to her for a while, so some are hypersensitive to that, or again just burnt out. On the whole, this wasn't a very exciting issue, and many panels felt claustrophobic. For a series that's embraced being so over-the-top melodramatic, this issue feels a little flat when compared to the others. It sets up some very important information, so when DC vs. Vampires resumes, if one hasn't read this, they may be lost, because this sets Harley up as the key to saving humanity. Some comics are more fun than others, and this was on the less fun side, which is notable because that's been the overall tone and vibe of the series, just kind of going for it. DC vs. Vampires Killers felt as though it was killing time until the end reveal, not building up character relationships or the universe in any significant way in the panels in between. But those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. Did you love this issue? Think it was oodles of fun? I don't know what fun is. Go back to reading about the Dinosaur League. Philistine. Thoughts on the evolution of Harley. How are they going to cure the world with Harley now fused with Lex blood? Tell me things down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
This is not your video. Alvin. Not your video. You want to be seen? Want to be seen? Want to be seen? Look, it's Alvin. Alvin.